Welcome back to some company news. The 13th edition of the Oil Trading and Logistics Expo has opened in Lagos, with many of the participants calling for improved and modern policies for the sector. The Downstream Oil Sector Conference, which brings together industry practitioners and regulators, focuses on growth, innovation and technology this year.
Undoubtedly, at least from the oil industry perspective, the Oil Trading and Logistics Expo has become the signature congress for the downstream segment. This year's edition opens with the theme Growth, Innovation and Technology. And as expected, it sets the tone for conversation.
From petroleum retail to haulage, marine logistics platforms, and several refinery projects that aim to balance the discrepancy occasioned by inadequate refining capacity on the continent, there is no shortage of effort by the industry. However, policy development and implementation have not kept pace with the urgency of industry needs.
Very well attended, the room has the regulators, operators, bankers, policymakers and other stakeholders, just as it is reflected in the position papers.
The market is already challenging enough, but then the regulators are not making it easier. The banks are not making it easier. The consumers are not making it easier. There are also sharp practices. So we need collaboration from all the stakeholders.
We would like to see a situation where government is sitting with marketers, sitting with investors, and actually understanding that within the value chain of the downstream sector, everyone could play in different areas.
The game changer is data and human capacity. Innovation and creativity is said to be what will shape the industry. The MD PPMC tells us more.
What is going to shape the whole future of our downstream is going to anchor by competitiveness. But the element of the competition that will see the surviving companies have been altered completely, have been altered by automation, by AI, by all what have you. And that's the reality of the market space.
Discussions have further escalated at the panel session.
If you don't invest in facilities that can be technologically upgraded, then you will not survive in fleets or transport or pipelines or whatever else you're doing. A round of applause.
All present then moves to the exhibition booths.
At OTL 14, I'd like to see that there is a removal of price caps. I'd like to see that we're talking policy on competition, no more policy on pricing.
The communique that will follow from this conference is highly anticipated by the industry watchers.
The Development Bank of Nigeria says it has disbursed a total of 100 billion naira in the current year as loans to business owners, especially women and youths with micro, small and medium enterprises. 95,000 MSMEs cutting across various sectors of the economy are beneficiaries of this year's loan. The DBN is now extending its services to Borno State, which is suffering an economic relapse due to the impact of the insurgency on all sectors.
I think in the sector of...
It's the maiden edition of the Micro, Small and Medium-Scale Enterprises Summit in Borno State, an event put together by the Development Bank of Nigeria. The aim of the summit is to empower people affected by insurgency through loans in order to develop MSMEs in the state. The managing director of the organization gives a breakdown of its achievements so far.
2018 was our first full year of operations, and we were able to increase our disbursements to roughly 30 billion naira and reached 35,000 MSMEs in the country. In the same year, I'm pleased to report that 72% of the loans were to women-owned and managed businesses.
The drive to focus on MSMEs is due to the fact that the sector is known to be a catalyst for economic growth and development in the country.
They are mostly independent people driven by a certain need to provide certain services. Some of them out of need for employment, and some of them out of just need for creation, to be able to do something different. So MSMEs are also engines for innovation and development.
The state government pledges to provide an enabling environment for these MSMEs to thrive.
We are committed to providing enabling environment for investments in science, technology, and innovation so as to transform the economy and stimulate human development.
The Development Bank of Nigeria also indicates interest in empowering internally displaced persons in the state to regain financial stability.
Talking about the IDP themselves, we know is to build capacity for them and empower them by providing access to financing for them to be able to begin to go back to do the businesses they need to do before.
Expanded on skills gap.
Enlightenment and peer review of established businesses and their challenges are also part of the panel discussion. The Development Bank of Nigeria says all MSMEs, start-up or established businesses involved in productive enterprises are eligible for loans.
Another dimension, for example.
And Wawodo has more business news.
You First. First Bank.
Thank you, Amarachi. Welcome to Business News. We begin with the president holding talks with Saudi Arabia's King Salman bin Abdulaziz in Riyadh, the country's capital, in efforts to strengthen bilateral relations between both countries. The two leaders met on the sidelines of a Future Investment Initiative conference, which is holding in that country. A statement from the presidency says that King Salman has assured President Mohammed Buhari, President of Saudi, is willing to invest in Nigeria's petroleum industry, which of course will strengthen the strategic partnership between the country's energy company, Aramco, and the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, the NNPC. President Buhari and the Saudi monarch, who also reviewed aspects of cooperation between both countries, had agreed to advance cooperation in the areas of oil and gas, given the similarities of both countries as big producers of the commodity. The federal government is reaffirming its commitment to lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years. Speaking in Abuja, the nation's capital, shortly after paying a working visit to the headquarters of the Bank of Industry, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Mrs. Sadiya Umar Farouk, says the federal government remains committed to eradicating poverty in all ramifications by the year 2030.
Over 4 million Nigerians have benefited from the federal government's Trader Money, a social investment program initiated by the government to eradicate poverty in Nigeria within the next 10 years. It is for this reason that the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development pays a visit to the headquarters of the Bank of Industry in Abuja. The minister has conducted rounds the command center of the Bank of Industry as she monitors the tracking of beneficiaries.
What they are doing, they are constantly receiving phone calls from across the country. Some agents, some beneficiaries have questions, some have challenges.
The managing director of the Bank of Industry explains the reason behind the choice of the bank as a driver of the government's initiative on eradicating poverty.
The federal government chose BOI as the engine to deliver this program for two reasons. One, a bank is required to legally issue loans. Number two, BOI is a government-owned bank with a 60-year history of delivering credit in Nigeria. The bank also has the largest nationwide structures and vast experience in this micro sector, and has therefore been able to scale the program quickly.
After a facility tour of the Bank of Industry, the minister expresses satisfaction with the transparency and initiative of the bank in driving the vision of the federal government.
We are very proud of the BOI and the team that have put up this center and this work, because it's a lot of work. As you said, it's not what we see on TV. We just see people, jumping that they have collected money. There's a lot of technical, work behind the scene. So I must commend you, and I want to also use this opportunity to really reiterate Mr. President's vision of lifting 100 million people out of poverty, and this is one of such, program that is geared towards.
Although over 4.2 million Nigerians have benefited from the Trader Money scheme alone, The bank, which currently manages the federal government's social investment programs, including market money and farmer money, remains the engine room of the government's initiative to eradicate poverty in Nigeria.
The stock market has regained about 32 billion naira at the close of midweek trading, and that's despite moderate losses from the industrial and the consumer goods sector. Let's join Edidiong Iwang for the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Now, despite reporting a disappointing earnings performance, the shares of Dangote Cement contributed largely to the 0.25% sharp rebound in the all-share index, marking its fourth gain for the month of October. However, the 2.05% increase on the cement giant share price did not have any impact on the industrial goods sector due to the 6.35% loss from its biggest rival, Lafarge Africa, but only the banking sector closed Wednesday's session positive by 0.11%. Total turnover of shares traded today were lower compared to Tuesday's session, as 156.84 million shares worth 1.8 billion naira were exchanged in over 3,000 deals. On the list of top trades are Multi-Universe Mining and Exploration, Sterling and Access Bank, while University Press was the highest gainer for the day by 10%, and Afromedia lost the most by 9.76%. Well, that's midweek trading at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. I'm Edidiong Iwang.
Thank you, Edidiong. Let's find out how midweek trading outside Nigeria fared today. U.S. stock markets have closed trading session positive across the board. Investors are still cheering the Federal Reserve's third rate cut within the year and signals that no rate hike will be in the medium term. Meanwhile, these are the closing figures for other markets. And that's Business News Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Back to you, Amarachi.
You First. First Bank.
Thanks, Anne. Twitter has this evening announced a ban on all political advertising worldwide, saying the reach of such messages should be earned, not bought. A move contrasts sharply with the social media rival Facebook, which ruled out a ban earlier this month. The Meantime Police in South Africa have arrested around 100 people as part of an operation to disperse a group of refugees and asylum seekers that staged a prolonged sit-in near the United Nations Refugee Agency in Cape Town. Refugees and asylum seekers have been camping outside the offices for weeks, demanding to be removed from South Africa, where they fear a wave of xenophobic violence after a spate of deadly riots in September, which killed at least 10 people. Here's Simon Pusey with more international stories in Around the World in 5.
Good evening from the Channel's newsroom here in London. The gloves are off, with campaigning now well and truly underway in the UK as the country prepares for a snap election. Political leaders threw their first punches during Prime Minister's questions, the last to be held before the December vote. In just his third appearance at PMQs since becoming leader in July, Boris Johnson promised Brexit will be a priority.
Mr. Speaker, I think what the people of this country want is their promises kept, and I'm not disposed to believe in the promises of the Liberal Democrats when their leaflets in London say they want to revoke the result of the referendum. Their leaflets in the southwest of the country don't mention Brexit at all. Mr. Speaker, that's them. That's the Liberal. What they stand for, that's the bunch of hypocrites, a lot of them. They stand for nothing but a policy of dither and delay.
Why did the Prime Minister previously say the health service wasn't on the table in any post-Brexit trade deal?
Mr. Speaker, the answer to that is very simple. It's because it is not on the table.
This Prime Minister's extreme Brexit will take a wrecking ball to the economy and cost Scotland and the United Kingdom up to £70 billion a year. You know, Mr. Speaker, we can talk about the impact of Brexit and they howl and complain because they know the reality that it's going to damage people's life.
With 6 weeks to go, British voters are now facing their first Christmas season election since 1923.
The majority of people probably think it'll swing Boris's way currently. He's 12 points ahead in the polls. Realistically, there's so many unknowns.
It's probably a good thing to clear the air in Parliament and hopefully bring about a majority government.
Whether or not an election is going to be a useful tool, I don't know. But I think people want some sort of change.
The London Fire Brigade has been condemned in a damning report into the Grenfell Tower disaster.
Look at that. Oof.
72 people were killed in June 2017 as flames raced up the building, fueled by flammable cladding. While the inquiry praised the bravery of individual firefighters, it criticised the LFB for its stay-put strategy. Residents were told to remain in their flats for nearly 2 hours as the fire spread. The report concluded that the brigade breached national guidelines for failing to adequately prepare for such an incident. The LFB says it's disappointed by some of the findings.
They're actually paid professionals. They choose to do the job and they have a lack of common sense and they just let people choose their own faith, whether they want to jump out, whether they want to choose to escape, and they shouldn't get away with it.
I absolutely accept that London Fire Brigade has failures and we have lessons to learn, and I fully intend that going forward from here, not only the work we're already doing, but having a detailed look at the recommendations of the Phase 1 inquiry is a priority for us.
Thousands of Iraqis have again defied a curfew, demonstrating for a sixth day in Baghdad's Tahrir Square. The protesters, driven by discontent over economic hardship, blocked roads as they demanded jobs, better public services and an end to corruption. It follows an upsurge in violence. At least 250 people have been killed since the unrest started on October the 1st. In Lebanon, major roads have been reopened after 13 days of protests, which forced the resignation of the country's Prime Minister, Saad al-Hariri. There were a few scuffles as soldiers and security officials cleared the area. Demonstrators who've been calling for changes to the system say they'll continue their fight until their demands are met. After 12 days at sea, a French charity rescue ship carrying more than 100 migrants has been allowed to dock in Italy. 2 pregnant women and 41 children were among those on board Ocean Viking. Italy gave the vessel permission to enter its waters after Médecins Sans Frontières issued an appeal. The Interior Ministry says France and Germany have agreed to take 70 of the migrants. MSF has welcomed the decision, but described the delay as disgusting and inhumane.
They've all come from Libya, where they tell us stories again and again of the abuse and the violence, the sexual violence, the being treated as property and sold as slaves. To keep them out at sea this long, it's completely inhumane and it's disgusting what's happening.
And finally, 37 years after the Falklands War, a statue of the Madonna is being returned to Argentina. It's been held by Britain since the conflict. The handover took place in the Vatican City. Pope Francis blessing the statue as he oversaw the transfer. The move is a gesture of reconciliation. And that's your international news around the world in 5.
Thanks, Simon. Still ahead on the news at 10, Ahmed Musa, Kenneth Omeruo and Daniel Akpeyi return as Super Eagles head coach Janet Raw into squad for next month's AFCON qualifier against Benin Republic and Lesotho. Stay with us.